So this is going to be a response video to an original video and a response video at the same time. So this one might get a little long. I'll try to keep it short though. So I have a lot of time in Back 4 Blood, and I've done virtually every single challenge possible. I also have a lot, like in the 4-digit hours in Left 4 Dead across consoles and whatnot. So this is a video that I have a very unique perspective on. I am a huge fan of Back 4 Blood and a huge fan of Left 4 Dead. So I have a fairly unique perspective of this in that I don't just mindlessly hate Back 4 Blood because the internet told me so. So I skipped the first 4 minutes of this video because they really didn't matter. It was just them talking about Left 4 Dead being a walking simulator, which it obviously isn't. The only way you can come to that conclusion is if you're like, yeah, all I got to do, because you spawn in safe house, you know, in the first safe house, which would be location A. Then you walk in a relatively straight line in most maps to safe house, you know, 2, location B. And it's like, yeah, but you're forgetting about everything that happens in between. Like, come on, man, that is the gameplay. So we're gonna start this here.
Allow me to address the 3 complaints I removed here. First, we have bot AI. Back 4 Blood's bot AI has historically suffered as the game has a very high skill ceiling.
So this is partly true. The Back 4 Blood bots are not good, but this also depends a lot on the player. And so I'm just gonna start this off right now. Back 4 Blood is not Left 4 Dead. Back 4 Blood is barely trying to have anything in common with Left 4 Dead. And Back 4 Blood basically had a revamp patch, like a fucking arcade edition, like a fighting game, where it's practically a completely different game now. So you need to talk about Back 4 Blood at launch and Back 4 Blood after the first like major DLC that added the next chapter. Because after all the reworks to things like AI and how the loots, like the card drop system works, it is basically a different game. So we're going to keep that in mind going through. The bots were really bad at the start. They are much better now. But like, for example, in this clip where the bot gets grabbed here, this is because the player has a lot of control over the bots in Back 4 Blood. If he had pinged behind him, the bots would have moved over. So if he walks in this hallway, here's a special spawn, he should be pinging back or walking back so that the special dies. Instead, he just watches what the bots do. This is not the environment that the bots were meant to thrive in. You know, the first area of the first map with 0 engagement from the player. And you could say that the bots shouldn't break here. I would actually agree with you. This is a very bad showing. But this also looks to be an older clip as well. Before the bot rework.
He does not do it justice just how bad those bots in Back 4 Blood are, or at least were when I was playing a few years ago.
And this is why I wanted to give a response to this video, because this guy actually seems to have a pretty level head on it. Because yeah, the bots are better now. They're not good, but most bots in these games are not exactly what you'd call good. Even like Left 4 Dead 2 bots are pretty shit for the most part. You know, like there's countless clips of them just walking right off of cliffs. Like bots are always not great in these games.
When the bots in your game can't perform the simplest of tasks, like
yeah, like this is a really bad showing. They don't do this anymore.
Teammates, what does that say about the rest of the game? Skill ceiling is not an excuse when you're.
Oh yeah, so okay, like again, this is exactly what I mean by a lot of the criticism around this game wasn't that great. Like yeah, the bots just completely break in the safe room like this because this zombie's not even supposed to be here. For this to happen, you look. So you see this? For this to happen, you have to put boards on these windows, close the door behind you, and then board up the final board to where there's only one board left to put on it. Then you just watch the bots. Because, yeah, the AI breaks in this situation because they're not even meant to be doing anything. There's not supposed to be anything in here. So you had to leave an enemy in here. I just want you to know how contrived the setup for this is. So you think I'm not just like, you know, defending the game for the sake of defending it. The only way for this to happen is if you go in this room, let a zombie get in here, and then place a board on the final window so that everything like shuts off so you can place the final board. It's a soft lock prevention system. And you have to make sure one zombie stays alive in here. That causes them to break. And the reason why it breaks is because this counts as a safe room. You know how the bots in Left 4 Dead don't like do anything in the safe room either? Yeah, it's the exact same thing there.
Left 4 Dead bots aren't perfect, but
and yeah, he's willing to give, you know, fairness where it's due.
They're actually functional. They help the player throughout the levels and can perform most of the same tasks as you.
Bots 90% of the time are functional in Back 4 Blood. They're actually incredibly functional most of the time, and there's actual strategic advantage to picking them. They'll always throw you ammo, so it makes some weapons incredibly powerful.
Almost as if they were created to work in the game that they were in. Go figure. Single player is actually an option in Left 4 Dead 2, while Back 4 Blood actively discourages it.
So that is true, but that kind of reeks of a little bit of a skill issue. For example, the AA-12 is the single best weapon in all of Back 4 Blood. However, its biggest limiting factor is ammo. With bots throwing you all their ammo, you can single-handedly run the AA-12 and practically true solo the game without much effort. I'm not even ragging on the guy for not knowing that. I'm just saying, like, those are the kind of strategic things that come up in Back 4 Blood that Left 4 Dead was never designed around. Again, they're not trying to be the same game.
The link the Back 4 Blood community had was that on a team of 4 people, you'd start with 4,000 copper to share between you. In solo, you'd only have 1,000 copper. That's an issue for sure, but it's not an issue that Left 4 Dead 2 ever had to deal with. Their solution was to have no shop. I failed to see how the solution to a slightly unbalanced mechanic is not attempting it at all.
So this is just a really terrible point. Like, I genuinely do not understand how he said the words that just came out of his mouth. Back 4 Blood wants to have the shop and the inventory and the building as it adds depth and complexity to the game. People like me greatly enjoy that kind of stuff. Left 4 Dead is trying to focus on a tighter, narrower, gameplay-centric experience. They're not the same game. They're not trying to do the same thing.
With the logic he's presenting here, he's basically saying it's better to implement a feature poorly rather than not implement it at all. You can't saddle a game with that lazy argument as if Left 4 Dead was going for a shop like Back 4 Blood was. You do know that Left 4 Dead...
Yeah, exactly. Like, they're not trying to achieve the same thing. Like, I don't even know why you would say that. Left 4 Dead doesn't have a shop because it's not designed with a shop in mind. Back 4 Blood has a shop because, that system is integral to the gameplay.
Came out first, right? Ultimately, the creators of the game were going for a survival horror experience. The type of experience where you fight enemies with the resources.
Exactly. And Back 4 Blood is going for a much more arcadey, fast-paced experience where there's a lot more going on and a lot more to think about. That's the difference. That is the primary difference between these two games.
Available to you. The weapons and equipment you find in the world and not through a damn merchant or shop, I would imagine is a deliberate decision. They don't need to create a solution to something that isn't a problem in the first place.
Exactly. He hit it dead on the money. It's not a problem. There is no solution, and there's no solution because it's not a problem. Whereas in Back 4 Blood, there's a lot more variables, so having a shop to reduce some of those variables and give you control, as long as you know you're smart enough to play the system correctly, makes that game better because of it. You know, you can't say the game would be better without a shop. It would be much worse.
Left 4 Dead 2 fans like to call the system that controls the enemy AI the capital G, capital D game director.
I don't know why he's saying this. Like, you know Back 4 Blood is a game director, right? I don't know how good the guy in question is at Back 4 Blood, but it's like, you know Back 4 Blood has a game director too, right? So does Vermintide. So does Deep Rock. Like, all of these games, if an enemy can be tagged and there's specials that spawn that have a specific way of dealing with them, that game almost certainly has a game director.
As if any other system can't level up just because you gave this one a special name.
Nobody's saying that. No one...
Yeah, I don't even know what argue... Like, this is like the Trump-Joe Biden debate clip where he's like, I really don't even know what he said at the end of the sentence there.
Is making that argument. That's not a thing. It just isn't.
Back 4 Blood doesn't have this adaptive game director. And that's...
Yes, it does. It's not adaptive, but it absolutely does. What are you talking about? Wait, like, did you and me play the same game? I thought, you know, I'm the one that's supposed to be defending Back 4 Blood here. Like, what? How do you think it determines what it spawns when and where?
That's a good thing. If I can't beat the game on the difficulty I set it to, then I want to at least know that the next time I play, I'll have learned and gotten better, until finally I can beat it.
So most players at launch, myself included, would witness a mutation system that would change each level.
Yes, and this is one of the best parts about Back 4 Blood. This is one of the reasons why I hated how they made it so that now you just spawn with all the cards in your deck. Seeing the mutation and then picking the correct card in your deck to counter that mutation and making it so that your deck had to be filled with utility and support cards specifically to counter mutations, and you couldn't just stack everything at once. Like, that was a big part of the game, which is just gone now. You know, and it's just like,
Regardless of whether you
that's what makes meta builds so dominant now.
completed or not. It's hard to learn from your mistakes when the mutations would drastically change the environment you would have to navigate to begin with. Now,
I mean, yeah, maybe if you don't look at what any of the mutations do. Hold on,
so
let's
most
go
players at
back.
launch, myself included, would witness a mutation system that would change each
So, like right here.
level.
Ferocious Ripper. Blah, 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 blah. 3 lines. So you know that this is going to be a tall boy that slams the ground and creates a 3-wave shockwave. So you have to stand in between his lines. Like, if you die from this, because this could hit all 4 players and deal pretty big damage, you now know, okay, if there's Ripper tall boys, instead of standing within their attack line to juke them, I have to stand They're basically like a fucking Trimactera from DRG. You treat, yeah, no, literally. So this is like a normal tall boy is like a regular Mactera, and these guys are like the spitter Macteras, and you handle them the same way. You just have a card giving you a heads up that these guys can spawn now.
Regardless of whether you complete it or not. It's hard to learn from your...
Like right here. Ferocious running ridden. So you know that this means ridden are going to sprint instead of the normal speed they're at, and ferocious, you know they're going to be doing much more damage. So it's going to be more prevalent that you have horde clear here. Like, you can absolutely learn from this. If you die and get overwhelmed from the basic enemies, then that probably means you need more clear in your build and less single target damage. Like, you absolutely can learn from this. You just have to, you know, read, which I know a lot of gamers hate.
Mistakes when the mutations would drastically change the environment you would have to navigate to begin with. Nowadays, it's easy to take for granted how unforgiving Back 4 Blood could be, since the game has been out long enough for metas and OP builds to be established. Back then,
actually, it has more to do with the fact that now you can just spawn with all the cards in your deck, which creates a massive money snowball, which lets you beat the economy into the ground. That's actually what has more to do with it.
And it was like being thrown into the deep end of the Pacific Ocean.
Also, Nightmare used to spawn double the specials that it currently does.
The challenge didn't come from honest gameplay. It came from being overwhelmed with a constant bombarding of enemies.
Yeah, but hold on. That's the game, though. There's more things that can spawn in Back 4 Blood, and things spawn faster in Back 4 Blood, because the player is way more powerful than in Left 4 Dead. In Left 4 Dead, you might have to deal with 6 specials across 10-12 seconds on, like, expert realism. In Back 4 Blood, dude, if you're playing on, like, you know, even just Nightmare, you might have to deal with 20 specials in like 5 seconds. And that's purely because of the shop and because of the building. Like, you have the power to deal with that. That's the game, you know? Like, I'm sorry, I'm going to be saying that a lot, but like, dude, that is the game. That's what makes the game fun. You have to optimize and play the economy to where you can handle that. Left 4 Dead is not trying to be that. You know, they're trying to be different things.
Left 4 Dead 2 fans like to claim that their game director can sense how well you're doing and send you more or fewer zombies depending on your progress.
Which, that's a great thing. That makes the game interesting and dynamic.
If you're struggling, it will calm the horde, and if you're doing too well, it'll send you more. If hard mode actually scales back down to easy mode, and
that never happens in any of these games. If you play realism or expert or any of these added difficulty modifiers in Left 4 Dead, even if you are just absolutely sucking it up, it will never scale itself down to a easier difficulty. That just doesn't happen.
Easy mode actually...
All it means is, like, instead of getting 7 horde spawns in a map, you might get 5. That's all it's trying to say.
Scales up to hard mode, then are there really any difficulty settings at all?
That's such a dumb fucking thing to say.
Do I really get a choice of what difficulty to play, or is it all an illusion?
You do realize the difficulty affects the damage
You can tell this person has not played the game if they're saying things like that.
you take in game, right? Someone who knew that wouldn't make this graphic otherwise.
Yeah,
because then
exactly.
It can look like an idiot. You talk about Left 4 Dead 2 not having standardized difficulty, but it does. The option you choose before a level is the standardization, and it affects other things like special health or friendly fire damage.
Oh, and then there's further modifiers that you can put on top of this, which further standardizes the difficulty. Like, I don't understand his complaint at all. It's a nonsense complaint.
At no point in the game does that constant ever change unless you or your team decide to change it yourself. You even reference official developer slides, but fail to even properly decipher what the point of the director ultimately is, which is a variety of things, including replayability, pacing, as well as balance. It's
Yeah, I agree with all this. Like, I don't have anything really to say about this particular point.
important to have a game that is providing a reasonable challenge to the players, because too much of something can be overwhelming and chaotic, but too little makes it boring and predictable. Surely you had to have experienced something like this in your 30-minute playthrough of Left 4 Dead.
Next, let's address the flashlights issue.
Okay, yeah, this is something I want to talk about on its own, especially like reacting to how Krobycat presented it. So, Left 4 Dead's flashlights go down when you melee. And they say it's to promote teamwork, yeah, all that stuff, it's great. That works great in Left 4 Dead. It is a great system there. However, may I explain to you that system would be miserable in Back 4 Blood? Because, again, you have to deal with more enemies, and those enemies have mutations. Like, for example, you would not be able to see some of the ground effects that are unique to the mutated ridden from the cards at the start of the run if you didn't always have your flashlight. So that means you could potentially take damage through no fault of your own. So you see how that leads to the system, how the Left 4 Dead system not really working with these game mechanics. Again, it's not to say that either game is better. It's just that they have differences. That's what makes them good, is that they aren't just complete copy-pastes of one another. Also, the flashlights in Left 4 Dead are explicitly shown and stated to be on the gun, so the thing you bash with, whereas the flashlights in Back 4 Blood are on the character's like chest. It's like a it's like those military flashlights.
It's true that in Back 4 Blood you can't voluntarily toggle your flashlight, which is a bit annoying when trying to see into a car or other small inlet spaces. As well, your flashlight will always be facing forward, even if you're reloading or using a melee weapon. Although, as a player, I can't imagine that would be fun, not being able to see just because I'm using a hatchet.
No, that could absolutely be fun. Look at dark mode. It could absolutely be an interesting experience and challenge, being deprived of one of your senses. That can absolutely be fun. Just, that's not the gameplay experience Back 4 Blood is going for. Back 4 Blood is trying to be less cinematic and more like an arcadey shooter. I mean, God forbid, Bounty Hunter, you literally get score for killing Ridden. Like, there are cards that allow you to do that. It's like you kill a special monster. It's like fucking House of the Dead. Oh shit, I fucking killed the guy with a headshot. I got a bonus, points for my high score. Like, it's trying to be more arcadey, whereas Left 4 Dead is trying to be more cinematic and immersive.
Again, in Crowcat's video, the developer commentary covers why the flashlights are the way they are in Left 4 Dead.
These shadow casting light sources not only add surface richness and provide important visual depth cues, they tie into gameplay. Because a player's flashlight is attached to his or her weapon, the light becomes
this is exactly what I said. Like, again, imagine if this is how it worked in Back 4 Blood, and then you lose half your health because of a hit that you could have dodged if you could have seen it, but there was no chance for you to see it. Like, you can see how that would get annoying, right?
Reloading or performing.
Whereas that doesn't really happen that much in Left 4 Dead, because Left 4 Dead is forgiving enough that, you might not have a cascade of failures that cause you to down really quickly.
Shove attack. Like so many of Left 4 Dead's game mechanics, this encourages cooperation, as players know they may be left in the dark if they choose to reload at the wrong moment.
And because for some reason this was important, the lights do...
What do you mean for some reason this was important? It was very important. Like, it genuinely added to Left 4 Dead. Again, it was designed for that system and works great in that system. Back 4 Blood's system was designed for its set of mechanics and it works great there.
Cast shadows. There's just an option to turn it off, because it looks so good, and Unreal Engine is so much more pristine than the grunge of Source that it might cook your computer.
Yeah.
Okay, I actually prefer Source Engine over Unreal, if I can be personally honest with you. I like things like bunny hopping. I like all the jank. I like rocket jumping. I do not like how Unreal Engine is just like a sleek standard. It's basically like making an interactive movie, the engine.
Guys, Back 4 Blood, this game is so finite, runs so well, that it might actually break your computer in the...
I mean, it does run pretty decently. Like, it doesn't, it's not like fucking when Elden Ring first came out.
Process. What type of paradox catch-22 ass statement is that?
Lastly, there's a strange focus on audio cues for some reason.
Because audio cues are really fucking important to not get put in a bullshit situation. Back 4 Blood has a bunch of audio cues too, right?
But while we don't always get the movie-like piano notes of Left 4 Dead 2...
There's a reason for that. Again, Back 4 Blood spawns more enemies in faster succession. If we got, like, 5 piano keys for every special spawn, it would quickly devolve into, like... Like, it would be grating on the ears. Back 4 Blood gives you less information for more things and forces you to, make the best judgment call you can with what you're given. Also, by the way, holy fuck, this guy is playing on like ultra giga easy mode, by the way. This is the easiest difficulty possible. He has all these downs and all this like health chunks. Holy shit. This guy is playing on like super ultra. If this was a difficulty in Doom, it would be like, please daddy cradle me to sleep and sing me a song. Like, would be the name of the difficulty.
Back 4 Blood does have the more realistic, distant rumbling and screaming of roaming specials, something you would learn from actually playing the game.
Yeah, and I will admit, this is a problem that with a lot of criticism of this game. Excuse me. Back 4 Blood has really good audio cues. Most people just do not take the time to learn them whatsoever.
With the sounds you're presenting in this video, I'm willing to bet that most people believe the specials don't have audio cues at all because of how easy they are to miss.
Yeah, but that's a fucking skill issue. You can't blame the game because people are bad at it. I mean, come on, man.
Especially if you're in a horde or boss battle, you're not going to be able to hear that whatsoever.
Oh, you absolutely can hear that. Come on. Come on now. Now you're being a little disingenuous. Okay, maybe you can't hear it because you just didn't play the game a lot, so you aren't used to it. But come on, man. Anything that's a little low-key and isn't in your face with a distinct musical high note, like, you're not going to know what it is the first, like, few hours you experience it. Like, that, I feel like it's fair to say that this is a little disingenuous.
So, once again, let's see what Chromecap may have had to say regarding this audio.
In playtests, people were often confused by certain events and elements in the game.
Exactly, that's what it is. People play the game for the first time, they get confused, they don't want to learn more, and they stop. It's a pain point. Valve is very good at smoothing out pain points and making them not, impact the experience.
The addition of musical cues help distinguish these events and diminish player confusion. Players who leave the music on.
Yeah, and it works in this system where there's less enemies. But if you scaled Left 4 Dead to where twice or thrice as many specials spawned, the musical cue system would start to fall apart. Again, it's almost like the games are different and have different strengths and weaknesses.
Are treated to a variety of subtle audio cues that not only deepen the horror experience, but make them better players.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, deepen the horror experience. Back 4 Blood is explicitly trying not to be a horror experience. So there's less of a need for this kind of thing on that front as well.
The key phrase in this clip is the audio serves to make the players better. While in Back 4 Blood, the lack of clearly identifiable audio cues, such as your clip shown, serves to make the game the confusing mess Left 4 Dead tries to avoid.
This sounds like skill issue. I don't know, man. I've just played the game enough that I've never been confused. I know exactly what spawns where and, how long it's going to take to get to me usually.
2 has 8 specials. The Witch, the Tank, the Boomer, the Charger, the Hunter, the Smoker, the Jockey, and the Spitter.
Yeah, and all of them are great. You do not need to change Left 4 Dead. Left 4 Dead is great. Left 4 Dead is great at being Left 4 Dead.
First, we have our first class of special, the Stalker, Hawker, and Stinger. In Class 2,
yeah,
we have the Tall Boy, the Bruiser, and the Crusher.
Okay, real quick. Hold on.
That leaves us with 23 total special infected.
There is not 23 special infected in Back 4 Blood. There is 3 variants of every special infected. So there's actually like 12-ish. Well, okay, see, this is a little murky. Like, for example, a Hawker and a Stalker aren't the same thing, but a Stalker, where is it? No, perfect example. A Tall Boy and a Tall Boy with Ripper mutation is effectively the same thing.
With each having different abilities and having to be dealt with accordingly. The depth here is incredible, and Left 4 Dead 2 doesn't hold a candle to it.
You heard it.
I mean, Left 4 Dead 2 is a lot of depth, but I will say Back 4 Blood has a lot more depth, because it has a lot more systems. Like, just by design, there's more things happening in Back 4 Blood, so it has to have more depth. For the simple fact that different things interact in different ways, massively, exponentially increase the variables, and you exponentially increase the knowledge needed to be good at the game. And that might not be a good thing. Like, some people do not enjoy that at all, and that's fair.
Back 4 Blood has 23 specials and Left 4 Dead has only 8. So, what does that matter if so many of the specials are so homogenous and just minor variants of one another? 23 to me is just a bloated number.
I mean, you can literally just read here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There you go. The 12 that I was talking about. You can just, boil it down to the main 12. And then you have the 3, archetypes that change off of it.
Comparison to 8. And even if the 23 specials were all that unique from one another, who wants to play a game where 23 specials can attack you at any given moment?
Me, I do. That sounds like an awesome challenge. I do. Me. That sounds great. I would love to try and learn all their little ins and outs and try to come up with a strategy when I get rushed by 7 of them. That genuinely sounds like a good time to me. That's why I like Back 4 Blood.
That sounds overwhelming to the players. That's completely unreasonable for someone to be able to identify all of them.
But it's not. It's not. It just takes longer than Left 4 Dead. See, you can pick up Left 4 Dead and have a good idea about all this stuff within your first 2 games. And that's a great thing Valve was able to accomplish. However, I like a little more going on. That's why I get bored of Left 4 Dead really easily, but I can find myself playing Back 4 Blood much longer. Because there's always more things for me to optimize and improve. And that's why I would prefer to play Back 4 Blood if given the opportunity.
Meanwhile, the 8 specials in Left 4 Dead all operate completely differently. They have different clothing, different looks, different physiques from one another, and in combination with those ever-important audio cues, there is no mistaking what these enemies are.
Left 4 Dead 2 has 33 different weapons. That's it.
You're right, it's easier. It has a lower skill ceiling and a higher skill floor. It is easier to pick up, and it's easier to master it. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of my whole point. And some people will prefer that.
A sizable amount, and I commend it for its variety, but Back 4 Blood has 42 different weapons.
This does not matter at all. The number of weapons literally doesn't matter, dude. I will gladly use the exact same weapon all day, every day. It does. I don't. Yeah.
Again, trying to state the case that more means better, but in this case, 33 weapons as opposed to 42 weapons isn't really that much of a significant increase.
And on top of that, each weapon can be upgraded.
I love the upgrade system in Back 4 Blood. A lot of people really just don't understand it. They don't like it because they just automatically associate it with other games, not realizing that there's actually a good bit going on here. So let's say you have a green weapon and you find the blue variant, like the same weapon but blue. You have to make a decision there, because let's say you have 3 attachments on your green weapon. It will probably be better than the blue. So there's no need to just pick it up because it's a higher rarity and shinier. Again, I like actually making those split-second decisions, because especially on harder difficulties in Back 4 Blood, you can't just like stand over the loot for a while. You'll get overwhelmed really quickly. So you have to identify, I have these attachments that do this for this weapon, and they synergize with my build in this way. So do I want to leave behind this gun that works how I need it to work for a better version that I might be able to get the same attachments on, you know, and like that, that is the game. You know, you've discovered the game. There you go. You are now playing the game. You are getting involved and thinking about the next best move. And most of the time, you're not going to make the perfect decision. It's like chess. That is what makes it fun.
Starting from white to green to blue to purple gives most weapons a clear upgrade system. As well, it diversifies your selection.
So yeah, that tier system exists in all kinds of games nowadays, and I've seen it enough to where I pretty much groan anytime that's an existing feature in a game.
Come on, man. Come on, like, you're gonna groan when you see it in, like, fucking World of Warcraft? Like, come on, dude.
Not original by any means, nor is the overall upgrade mechanic that tangible to the average player, the stats, the numbers, unless that's just the type of gunplay you really enjoy and care for.
I mean, it is incredibly tangible. Think about Stumble. So there is a stagger mechanic in Back 4 Blood called Stumble. And there is a shotgun, the TAC-14, that is the highest stumble in the game. If you take cards that increase your stumble and you use the TAC-14 and you use literally just like 1 or 2 cards plus that weapon plus the barrel that gives you 100% plus stumble, you are able to one-shot stagger everything. So you want your bullets to spread and your goal isn't to do damage. That kind of stuff is really cool and can't happen in Left 4 Dead. You know, again, for better or worse. And in this case, it's for better. It works better in Left 4 Dead not having to worry about that kind of stuff. But then people like me really will enjoy that kind of thing.
Let's imagine a scenario. You have a gun, and you find another one on the floor. You have to think about which to take. Say this happens in Left 4 Dead 2. You have 2 things to think about. First, do I want to use this gun? Maybe you prefer blowing heads off with it.
Okay, I already see where this is going. But, like, is this even a problem? Like, again, if you enjoy the overthinking aspect of Back 4 Blood like I do, then you just play Back 4 Blood. If you enjoy the more simplistic, tighter experience of Left 4 Dead, then play Left 4 Dead. You know, it's like not a crime to like both of these games, right?
Shotgun, and would prefer not to spray an Uzi. Next, what's the damage output? Well, you have to actually go to an external source to find that.
Yeah, you don't need a chart like this. The damage for weapons in Left 4 Dead 2 isn't a priority you even need to factor in. The player can...
Okay, hold on. To be fair, it actually is. If you want to get really good at Left 4 Dead, there is absolutely a handful of meta weapons, and you never use anything but those, like 3 or 4 guns. Like, come on, man. Like, for example, the AK-47, there's never really a time when you don't use the AK unless you can get, like, an LMG. You know, or maybe a grenade launcher. But because the AK is the unique property of one-shot headshotting like everything, there's literally never a reason to not use it. Same with like the tier 1 Uzi.
Use whatever they want. I've put in triple-digit hours into Left 4 Dead at this point, and never once have I concerned myself with this type of information.
Wow, that's crazy. I have more hours than him in Left 4 Dead. That's wild to me.
There are many things.
Just not all on Steam.
To think about. 1. Does this gun work with my deck? Some decks are built around specific types of guns, and some cards
Yes.
work with specific gun types. 2.
Yeah.
Will I have enough ammo to use this gun?
Yeah, that's another big concern. You will run out of ammo quite a lot, surprisingly.
Guns use different ammo types, and if your team is running 3 shotguns, you might not want to pick up a 4th, because then you'll all be running out of ammo very quickly. 3. Is this gun a higher quality than my current gun?
What I see is an entire team stopping dead in their tracks to sift through a mass grave of items and equipment instead of progressing to the level.
Okay, yeah, you're right, but have you also considered that, because look, it looks like they have all blue gear, and they have all blue attachments for the most part. There is no reason for them to be stopping over these other blue chests. Unless they're specifically looking for a weapon. Like right here, like Witness. Witness is great. You know, because of that 20% damage highlight increase. So unless you're explicitly looking for something like that, there's no reason to even be here right now. So like they're just wasting time. And on a harder difficulty, this would really screw them over. So, you know... At this point, when you're this geared, you want to just be running ahead. You don't even want to stop to deal with this stuff. Like, this is what bad Back 4 Blood players look like.
All of these factors you're trying to consider right now, you don't even realize is impeding the progress you could be making through the mission.
Okay, but now consider this. They're making economy progress right now, though. Look, they've got med kits on the ground that they can use to improve their supply situation. This is like CSGO. They're basically taking an eco round. Now, I would disagree that they should be taking this eco round, but again, welcome to the game Back for Blood. They are using their reprieve from fighting things to try and get ahead on the economy eco side of things. This is exactly like in CSGO. Basically, the argument he's making is like, why would you ever pick an eco round in CSGO? You know, all I see is you wasting your time and potentially losing a round that you could win if you just spend what money you do have. Like, that's basically what the argument you're making here, and I don't think he quite realizes that.
This is a constant loop of sorting and sifting that doesn't exist in Left 4 Dead, which allows you to focus on the game ahead of you.
Okay, but what if you're like me and you like sorting and sifting? You know, like, does that detract from the experience if you enjoy that aspect of the experience? I don't think it does.
Never mind the fact that if you're playing Back 4 Blood, you can always just ignore all of this and choose a gun the same way you would in Left 4 Dead 2.
With all the considerations suggested previously, I find that a little hard to believe. This isn't exactly...
Come on, man. There's literally only 2 cards for every weapon type that only specifically affects that weapon. So let's say you're playing shotguns and you use, like, you know, you get health back for every pellet hit. You have 2 cards that give you 15% damage to shotguns. If you can't figure out to just pick up a shotgun at that point, like, you might be a little too stupid to play Back 4 Blood. You know, like, I don't know what to tell you. If you intentionally read plus damage to shotguns, healing when dealing damage with shotguns, you read that, then you put those cards in your deck with the intention to use them. And then you're like, oh crap, should I pick up the shotgun or this other gun that I have no bonuses for? Like, is it fair to say you're kind of stupid if you're actually having that mental conversation?
A casual game. The idea of building a character deck and having the right weapons and equipment to face Back 4 Blood isn't...
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. Back 4 Blood is a less casual, like, Left 4 Dead. That's a very fair thing to say. And unfortunately, that plus how bad it was at launch is what really killed it. It was Left 4 Dead for people who wanted a little bit more of an involved experience, but it came out in a really bad state.
Exactly an optional experimental feature. It's almost mandatory to build these things up to even have a chance in Back 4 Blood.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, again, that's what makes the game good.
Back 4 Blood puts a lot of time and effort into making the gameplay satisfying. Everything involves strategy and quick thinking.
I mean, Left 4 Dead's gameplay is incredibly fucking satisfying, so I don't know what you're getting at here. I think they both have satisfying gameplay. It's satisfying in Back 4 Blood when your deck clicks and everything just works exactly how you want it to. And it's satisfying when you take a detour to find loot, and that loot ends up coming, like, you know, you peer off to the side, find a supply crate, find a toolkit in it, use that toolkit to open up a supply room that you otherwise wouldn't be able to. And then because you bought a team utility upgrade beforehand, the bonus chance to save the supply kit came in. And now, so like, your decision to play the eco game got you a supply kit, and your decision to upgrade before now procced a bonus to make it so you didn't, you know, use the supply kit, but you got its effect. And it's like, ah, man, it's just a rolling snowball of good things happening for us. Whereas, had we not made any of these individual decisions, we would have had none of these things happening, you know? And it's like, that is just really cool. It is a very satisfying experience when that kind of stuff happens.
I never want to get caught out of position in case a horde is called.
I mean, that's the exact same thing in Left 4 Dead, dude. Come on. Like, do you want to be by yourself when a tank spawns and a smoker grabs you? Like,
always checking rooms for copper lying around that I can use later to buy supplies. Neither of these are present in Left 4 Dead 2.
No, that's just wrong. Left 4 Dead 2 does have these features present.
Yeah, like, what are you even saying? You know, if you're by yourself in Left 4 Dead, more specials spawn, right? Like disablers, just like in Payday and Darktide.
Left 4 Dead, if you're out of position or straying away from your teammates, you're far more likely to be swarmed by hordes of special infected since
yeah,
you're
exactly.
the target. And while the game doesn't have a shop that you for some reason faulted for, there does exist the need to loot and clear other areas to find extra equipment or weapons.
To be fair, if you go play Versus online, you will probably get yelled at for doing this. Because in Versus, it's such a competitive environment. Anything that there are some supply rooms that people always check because they're close by and they all have a high chance of spawning like an adrenaline, which is a game-changing item. But 90% of the time, no, people will be like, what are you fucking doing, you noob?
That you're going to no doubt need later on in the game. You're being incentivized to look beyond the straightforward path, and you're usually rewarded for doing so. If you're trying to play this game as if it's Time Crisis or some on-rail shooter, you're probably going to miss things like this. But again, you're 100% wrong.
Because in Left 4 Dead 2, the creators wanted to make a movie. You play the movie Left 4 Dead 2. Every play
Yeah, I mean, it's a more cinematic experience. What's wrong with that? You know, like, I don't see what the issue is.
through is the same, and every player has the same experience as every other.
Somewhat? Like, that's such a weird thing to say. Like, that's true for every game in this genre. You know, like Payday 2 is arguably the game with the most variety in this genre. And even then, it's just like random map events. Like every map, well, the good ones anyway, will have like 5 or 6 random things that could happen that change an objective or two. You know, like that's about as good as it gets for this genre. So I don't really see what you're saying here. Like, congratulations, you spotted it. These are the games. They pride themselves on having high skill ceilings, and mastering the gameplay loop is the reward.
Yeah, also wrong. Left 4 Dead 2 is not providing the same exact Call of Duty type linear experience to everyone, and the fact that thousands of players are
I mean, it's like 80% of the way there.
still enjoying the game 15 years after the fact is a testament to that.
He says as he's using an M16 in a map that never plays out differently outside of different, you know, like interacting with specials. I agree with most of what he's saying, but you could not have picked a worse visual clip to match up with that. Come on.
These people are not all having the same exact experiences, a lot of which is impartial to that pesky director you disdain so much.
In Back 4 Blood, you can play the same level as a sniper DPS role or a melee doc. As an aggro, alert all the hordes pusher.
If you play as a melee doc, you should take LTG's advice and you should fucking KYS now.
Or stealthy
Like, that sounds like such a bad build.
disarm the alarms ninja.
He talks about these builds as if this game is some super deep Fallout-ass RPG, but a lot of the cards in-game require an egregious amount of currency that you can only buy in supply drops. You can't buy them as you want or need them. In fact,
Okay, so this is a very valid complaint when the game was new. However, I actually recently got a friend into Back 4 Blood, and we did a single run-through of Act 1 in Nightmare. And it was a double card event. He got about 8,000 currency off of that. Enough to buy half of the cards in the entire game off of one singular, like 3-4 hour gameplay session. If it wasn't a double card weekend, then, or well, not weekend, but like event, whatever the fuck they call it, he would have gotten 4,000 in one run. Not one mission, but one like from the start of the act to the end of it. Basically, you could buy Back 4 Blood right now, play on Nightmare, play through all of Act 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and you would have like 50-60% of the cards. So basically, play through the entire game once or twice, and you'll have borderline all of the cards. That is not asking for a whole lot, I don't feel like.
I remember during launch having a specific farming build for one level that everyone was playing over and over again.
Yeah, this was really bad, though.
Just to be able to grind the currency needed.
But again, to be fair, this only lasted like 6 months. Like, the game spent longer period of time without this than it did with it.
Have this problem.
For my final point, Back 4 Blood does have a story, and even individual character backstories, which is even more impressive.
Who gives a shit, dude? Back 4 Blood is not a game about characterization. The characters don't really matter in Back 4 Blood because they primarily exist as accessories to the gameplay. Whereas because of the more cinematic nature of Left 4 Dead, the characters exist to substantiate the gameplay. You know, I am doing this because I want these characters to survive. Whereas Back 4 Blood is more, I pick these characters because they synergize with what I want to do.
Impressive, given that it has 11 characters, each with their own abilities, compared to Left 4 Dead 2's 4 identical characters.
Like, I don't even know how you could try to say one of these ways is better than the other. These systems are so far apart. Left 4 Dead is about 4 likable characters with, you know, that are actual characters. Whereas Back 4 Blood is about 12 interchangeable cleaners. You know, Left 4 Dead is a story of survival with 4 unlikely heroes. Back 4 Blood is a story of people taking up arms to fight back against the zombie outbreak. You know, like they're willingly choosing to go into that, whereas Left 4 Dead is about them trying to get out. So it's far more compelling just storytelling in general. It's easier to empathize with the Left 4 Dead crew. So, like, by design, you get more out of Left 4 Dead having good characterization. Like, I don't understand the argument here.
For the umpteenth time, more does not automatically mean better. A game having 12 characters to choose from is not automatically better than 4. This is such a backwards mentality to have. One reason why characters may be identical has a lot to do with the accessibility of multiplayer. If one character has an ability over another, players are going to start establishing metas and preferences in a game that would ruin the idea of cooperation and teamwork. Also, with it being a
That's pretty fair. But most of the characters in Back 4 Blood are strong enough that it really doesn't matter what you pick, as long as what you pick actually works with the deck that you pick.
multiplayer game.
And considering you can have like 50, decks, like
You
it's
might want to invite friends to play.
okay, that's a massive
Sometimes you might
exaggeration,
be in the
but
middle of a game because the 4 survivors are identical. All they got to do is join the game and fill whatever slot is available. They don't have to worry about perks or being the right character. They can just jump in and play.
to be fair, you are able to pick your character after joining, so
I can tell you firsthand that on PC, players fill games all the time, and I've yet to see any complaints about which survivor they join at.
The Crowcat video does a great job of playing up the role of story in the development of Left 4 Dead 1, but makes no mention of Left 4 Dead 2. Why is that?
I don't know, man. Probably because he couldn't find as much behind-the-scenes information on it.
Well, having played Left 4 Dead 2, it's because there is none.
Crowcat covering Left 4 Dead 1.
What? Left 4 Dead 2 is a story? What are you talking about? Left 4 Dead 2 absolutely has a story. Shut the fuck up. I'm like, shut up.
Nothing to do with any characters or storyline being bad. He's using Left 4 Dead 1 since Turtle Rock would have been primarily developing that game before Valve stepped in. That's the reference point. The video is titled Back for Blood Proves Valve Carried Left 4 Dead.
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
Projects, one with Valve's influence and one without. Yes, there is a story in Left 4 Dead 2, and yet despite that, it isn't mandatory to play the maps in any order, nor is it necessary to even know the story.
Why does it even matter if there's a story, man? I just care if the game's fun.
Each campaign tells a story within itself, so that players can have free reign to engage whatever they want, is a reason why all the maps are available to you at the start.
You play as 4 people who just happen to live next to each other and need to be rescued.
You play as 4 people who...
I don't think these characters live next to each other. I don't think Nick, Coach, and Ellis even live within a state of each other. I think they just happen to be next to each other when the apocalypse happens.
We're all heading to an evacuation zone only to be left behind, and now those 4 people need to work together in order to make it to where that helicopter was going.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, it's a far more compelling narrative, so it makes you want to get invested in the characters. Back 4 Blood, like, deliberately doesn't want you invested in the characters because you might change them for your build. So they can only be so deep.
Further events unfold from there.
On the contrary, there are a multitude of storylines in Back 4 Blood going on at the same time.
Yeah, and all of them are shit. Like,
Christine is named Mom because her son died on a rescue mission, and the others call her that since no one else is going to.
yeah, like, that's cool, but I don't give a fuck.
Evangel is new to cleaning, and the first level is actually his first mission. Hoffman
Okay,
has
like...
his middle school teacher killed when she slipped on his backpack down the stairs. The backstory about the cleaners
Okay. Thanks for the trivia question, dude. Like...
you can find on any given playthrough goes pretty deep, but, you'd have to actually play the game to know that.
So here we are again with the smart-ass comments about playing the game. Meanwhile, a lot of those character backgrounds sound like things that were rattled off in a character trailer, as opposed to organically...
Yeah, like, who
finding
cares?
these things out
It's...
in-game.
War-torn veteran, check. Deadly accurate, check, check, check. He weirdly digs this whole apocalypse thing.
Yeah, dude, the fucking trailers are bad. I'd rather not talk about these. These trailers are really fucking bad, man. They were really bad.
He always comes prepared.
They don't even show what the game is all about.
Who's laughing now?
Do all of these talking points really constitute character development at the end of the day, or are they just things that happen to them? In fact, some of these backgrounds sound like some stories that Ellis might tell about his buddy Keith in Left 4 Dead.
I ever tell you about the time me and Keith filled up water balloons with our own...
Finally, here's a rapid-fire list of complaints I had while playing Left 4 Dead 2.
Okay.
Where do
Thank you for the flashing, colorful thing, the epilepsy. Thanks for that.
I start? And why are there so many levels?
You see this one that's conveniently at the top? You start there, and then you go down. Yeah, you see how that works?
Start on whatever level you want. Also, the same person who's been touting about Back 4 Blood having more weapons, more characters, more specials, now all of a sudden is complaining that Left 4 Dead has too many levels? Talk about hypocrisy.
Oh wait, it's because there are 3 different storylines. And actually, technically, the second storyline...
Who gives a fuck, man? They're all, well, almost. They're almost all really good maps. Like, who cares?
comes before the first storyline, and the third storyline isn't even canon.
Once again, you don't need to stress over storylines, play whatever you want. The reason why Left 4 Dead 1 maps come before the second is because they were added into the game years after release as DLC, and the non-canon maps that were post-release were made by the Left 4 Dead community, not developers.
Select a character. Well, actually, it doesn't matter who you pick, they all do the same thing.
Yeah, but you might, like, I like Ellis and Coach and Nick and Rochelle. Fuck, man, I like all these characters. Go ahead, man, it's always hard to fucking pick a character because I like them all.
Which is nothing.
He still has this hyperfixation that these characters need to have the system in place that Back 4 Blood does to make it any good.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's weird. Like, no, you don't. Back 4 Blood has its system because it works for Back 4 Blood. Left 4 Dead has its system because it works for Left 4 Dead. Like, I don't, like...
We've already talked about why he's wrong.
Taking damage completely disorients your reticle. What the hell is even happening?
Okay, I will admit I actually really hate this about Left 4 Dead. I would prefer if my games never impeded my vision for anything ever. I really dislike games, you know, smudging up the screen. It personally bothers my eyes greatly.
It's to show to the player that they're being attacked.
Yeah, but that red jelly effect also happens, like, and it tells you where the attack's coming from. That is more than enough.
You're looking at the ground inspecting a weapon, and because of the clear indicator that you're being hit, you then look up to kill the zombies hitting you.
Yeah, but you don't have to blur my screen, man. Like, come on. I turned motion blur off for a reason.
Looks like he did his job to me.
Anyway, those are my opinions on Left 4 Dead 2. I think going into it expecting it to be a game like Back 4 Blood was a mistake.
Well, yeah, no shit. They don't share any similar... Dude, Killing Floor is in the same genre as Left 4 Dead and Back 4 Blood. The only difference is it's wave-based instead of, like, you know, progression-based. Like, go from one area to the next. But you would never expect them to be the same thing. Payday's the same thing. It's in the same genre. Deep Rock is in the same genre. But all of these games are good because they all differentiate themselves. Why would you expect it to just be Back 4 Blood? That's stupid.
I personally didn't have fun, but it also doesn't matter because it's just a movie. I didn't want to watch a movie though. I wanted to play a game, and I don't really feel like I did.
What a weird thing to say.
Well, after watching this video, it's evident to me that you didn't want to like this game. Not in the slightest. Ladies and gentlemen, despite everything stated in this video, it's okay to not like Left 4 Dead. It's okay.
Okay, this is the ending. Yeah, that sums up basically everything I have to say about this video. What a weird video, man.